the high-end headsets called HTC Vive, and so I am Senior Director of Content. Well, we always like to say that everyone remembers their first time in VR, and it's actually very true. So I was working at a company called Leap Motion, which is this little kind of USB peripheral that plugs into your laptop, and it allows you to control your computer using just your hands. And that company thought, you're going to have your keyboard, your mouse, and your Leap Motion. And this coincided with the release of the Oculus DK1, which was the very first developer version of their headset. And our, engineers and our sort of high-tech wisdom duct taped a Leap Motion to the front of the DK1, and I could see my hands in this VR environment, and I just thought, this changes everything. And I just fell in love with the technology. And I was focused on enterprise at that company. So then my focus was, all right, how can enterprises leverage this immersive technology for improving processes and education? And so I've been devoting the last 7 years of my life to that.
Great. I think a lot of people think of VR and AR as a consumer thing. What are some of the most interesting or sort of just most productive uses in the enterprise context you've seen?
Well, so now I'm at a company who makes the high-end headsets called HTC Vive, and so I am Senior Director of Content for Enterprise, and really what that means is that we're focused on delivering the solutions. So that's exactly what I focus on a daily basis. So we're taking kind of a horizontal approach instead of a vertical approach because every single company can leverage immersive technology. So we look at 4 pillars, and it's design, collaboration, visualization, but I think the number one for us right now is training and learning.
Okay. And what are the most popular training applications, and what kind of traction do those have these days, and traction or cost savings, or however you want to frame it?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was a consultant before this. I had my own consulting firm working with large enterprises on kind of scaling and mostly starting with POCs, which is where we got stuck a little bit, which is why I went to Vive. But it's not necessarily a particular program. It's for each company. A lot of them are doing very, very specific types of training. So what we help them do is we help them find the right development teams, or we help them find solutions they can customize. But I used to bet my fee as a consultant that whatever the learning outcome was that they wanted, that they would see double-digit improvement. And I never had to give back my fee. So that's when you start to think about double-digit improvement in an enterprise environment where it's millions of dollars at stake, it's the economy of scale is tremendous.
Yeah. So what would you say about the uptake? Because it sounds like based on the numbers that you've seen, it's quite profitable for them. But it also seems like there are probably applications where VR isn't used that it could be. Like what would you say about that adoption curve and why we might not be further?
Yeah, actually, I wish I had a slide with me because there's a slide that shows where we are with VR relative to other emerging technologies, around kind of the age of the internet and mobile, which is what we compare a lot of this to. And for those of us in the industry, we can't wait for the adoption to happen. And AR is a big component of that as well. But we're kind of where we're supposed to be, right? We had this gradual growth and it's sort of flattening. And it's hard for companies to think about investing in the hardware as well. Because the life cycle of the hardware now, there's new hardware coming out almost every year that improves upon the last. And so as an industry, we're working on kind of standardizing the programs so that they're all backwards compatible. But this is a big investment. And if you look at companies, you didn't have mobile in enterprise for a while until it was actually much more kind of ubiquitous on the consumer side. And I think that augmented reality will drive a lot of virtual reality in the enterprise, which sounds a little counterintuitive, but we, as consumers, we don't really have a fluency with this technology, AR or VR. We're using AR for face filters, and enterprise just really can't find a good use case for face filters yet, but who knows? But once, Apple is purportedly coming out with the glasses in 2020, which of course, 2020, it has built-in marketing for it. And then we'll get to see how consumers interact because, consumers are the workforce and the workforce are consumers. And once we start to see a little bit more engagement and adoption on the AR side, I think that will make companies feel more comfortable investing in VR.
Great. And so when you first got involved in VR, if you were to think back at that initial excitement and the possibilities, and it's just so obvious to you at that time where it might go and where we are now, how does it compare? I mean, where are we relative to where you thought we might be at this time?
I think I like to live in my little bubble where it's like, all of this is going to happen. It's going to happen now. And somebody sitting in the front row who shall remain nameless, who spoke immediately before me and is right there, is very, very well aware of my inability to, live in the real world sometimes. But the interesting thing about this industry is that we're sort of this small collective. I call us the second grade soccer team. Because we literally travel around a pack around the ball, going to conference after conference, telling each other how great the technology is. And I sort of broke away from the pack, going to more vertical specific conferences so we could get the word out a little, to people who would potentially buy this technology. To more directly answer your question, it's much slower than I would have liked, but I do understand that this is, on the trajectory that emerging technology normally takes, with the notable difference now that we have another 20 technologies behind it, kind of all evolving at this epic pace. And it's all of these technologies converging that are going to be the solutions of the future. And we know very little about each of them, let alone how to combine them for how we're going to live in the future. So I think that's another one of the stumbling blocks.
So it sounds like there's a breakthrough moment in this space that's coming up, in your opinion, right?
You have to keep talking while I get my.
Okay, yeah, there you go. So we had still water and the sparkling water. So brought to you by Barzomi. Not sponsored, actually, but they're welcome to.
But thank you anyway.
Yeah. So I mean, so one of the things that we do at these conferences is not just bring together people who have startup companies or who are investors or whatever. It's also to bring together people who are thinking about what they want to do in the world and what they want to do in the future and where would a good place to be if you're going to put your energy, bet your life energy in something. And what would you say to maybe young people, a few years out of school or something, who want to do something entrepreneurial or technology oriented? Like where might they locate themselves in this space? Because it sounds like there's a convergence and then some sort of straight line technologies.
Yeah. So actually, I think it's interesting because if you take Amrit's talk earlier, right, and he's talking about moonshots and these big ideas, which I am a big proponent of. Like I believe in thinking bigger. I think, stop thinking small, go for the thing that seems impossible. But then we also have to live in the real world that Bill inhabits, because you're going to have to pitch him for money so that you can build the moonshot. And you have to have some kind of path and concept. So it's very, very difficult to bridge those two, because what we love about entrepreneurs, and we saw a lot of this yesterday, as a lot of you were at sort of our pitch sessions. It's about looking at the big picture. And there's one thing that's great to have this kind of very singular vision about something, but it's also important to understand where you fit in this tech ecosystem and know enough about blockchain and AI and immersive technologies, because those are ways you can actually elevate your product or service that will help fast track you to success. And it's a challenge for everyone. But I urge everyone to be educated a little bit on a multitude of technologies, and then find your lane and be the best and the fastest in that lane.
Okay, so it sounds like it's useful to have this integration of knowledge of different areas, and then develop expertise in one piece. So one interesting thing just in Georgia is there's a company that these guys were originally into gaming and CGI and things like that. And then they really wanted to do VR, right? They're like, "This is so cool, we want to do it." And they're like, "Well, wait a minute, nobody has these headsets. They're like really expensive. So what do we do now?" And they went in the direction of kind of a B2B play, more of a travel marketing play. And I'm curious about your thoughts about that, because it seems like consumer adoption right now is not that high. So are there ways to sort of get into something that could become consumer facing, but a couple steps ahead of the band?
Well, I like that you brought them up because I can't remember your name, but I did meet the founder last night. And, I think that's really smart. Build your product in such a way that it can be appealing to enterprise. You can get customers, they will pay for it. But there's definitely a consumer play with their specific product because it's around travel, it's around experiences. And, as the adoption starts to rise, it's would be a very tough pitch. Like, I would not want to go to Garage Ventures and try and pitch, "Hey, we're going to do consumer VR for travel." It's like, but nobody has headsets. But give us a few $1 million and let's just see how it goes. But to have it as this sort of tangential market that you can move into once you have established yourself and you have revenues in the enterprise space, I think that's a really, really smart approach.
Nice. So what are you currently doing in the field? It sounds like you're working on the enterprise level. What is your portfolio of involvement with the VR or the XR AR VR ecosystem? What does that look like these days?
I want to build a marketplace for enterprise content. And it's not going to be an app store because enterprises aren't going to go, "Hey, let's go surf HTC Vive's marketplace and find our next training application." But what we want to show to them is that once we have guided them and said, "Look, we know that you're going to have tremendous ROI using this type of training," as they go and they get their licenses from us, they're going to see that there are design tools there. There are collaboration tools. They can have their entire team around the world come into a virtual environment and work with designs or data or simply meet or train. Or I have a huge pharma company who they release 6 or 7 drugs for rare disease every year. And they're very, very specific indications. So the salespeople have to go through very specific training to be able to sell this to physicians. And they used to fly these teams in, 2 or 3 times a year. If you can imagine, it's incredibly expensive. And we now have them doing that in VR. And so they do all the training. We train the trainers, so we'll bring the trainers in. But it's one group that goes once a year. They learn about the slate of drugs that are coming in. This, of course, assumes FDA approval, but and then they go back to their respective teams and they do all of their role play, sales training, leadership training, management training in virtual reality, and it's remarkable.
Okay, great. And in the AR VR field, what do you think about people creating things in Georgia versus going to San Francisco versus going to LA? Are there certain sort of centers of gravity that you think are just very important to attach to? Or do you feel that there's opportunities for more decentralized development? Again, it's a broad question.
Oh, I love the decentralized. The original book title was "Blockchain is the New Black," but I think maybe decentralized is the new black. No, I think what is amazing about startup grind and just in my travels, what I have discovered is that in Silicon Valley we love to think of ourselves as the center of the universe for innovation, and we are to a degree. But I think that really what we are is a good model. I hope we're a good model because there is incredible innovation and entrepreneurship. I mean, just the companies we saw yesterday, right? And the passion and the spirit. And you combine that with what you now have here. So you have government support, you have academia, you have businesses. So you have already, it was seemingly a very short time, built this community that has all the ingredients you need to springboard. And prove your model out here, prove your model out in Europe, and then come onto the United States and, guns blazing, like we're ready for it, because innovation can't happen in a bubble. And what happens, I believe, in Silicon Valley is that, we sometimes become really myopic about, what the rest of the world thinks. And, every country and every culture has its own set of problems that they're dealing with and perceptions about how to solve things. And for all of us to move forward into this insane future of technology that we are screaming towards, we need entrepreneurs globally. And so, I couldn't be more impressed with what I've seen here and what I hope to see elsewhere in the world.
Awesome. And that reminds me of, there was a VC from a very well-established company who was visiting Georgia and met with some folks here. Actually, a team came, and he was excited about what he found as you are. And one of the things he said is it's a much more divergent startup system, because you have these norms sometimes where, like in Silicon Valley, it becomes, oh, this is just the way you do it. This is the way you look at things. This is what's possible and not possible. You need to have this sort of arrangement. That when you get outside of that bubble, you can get more creative ideas. So I think that's a very good encouragement for everyone in this room to think about, how can you not just follow what's happening in Silicon Valley, but also like come with your own moonshot ideas. And this is a reason I think Georgia has the potential to be a decent startup ecosystem, because there is this history of vision and poetry and grand ideas. Yeah, like what city of this population and GDP has like so many grand theaters that people are holding? So I think that's. So what could a country do if Georgia decided that the VR, AR was a thing that they felt there was a market moment for? Like, what would you recommend the government and institutions do locally?
Well, I think the first order of business would be to kind of look at local industry here and what types of problems they need to solve, because we always sort of say when we go in sort of as a consulting team, it's like, it's not about bringing in technology. It is, what are you trying to solve? What are you trying to do better? But I don't want to confuse that with just doing what we're doing now a little bit faster. Where I think we need to start kind of propelling ourselves is, let's talk to companies, let's engage them in a way and share with them this vision of the future that's coming. What is the promise of AI? What is the promise of blockchain? What is the promise of immersive technology? And then look at their business structure and see where each of those technologies could really fundamentally change how they work, because we sort of know where we want to go. So how do we use technology to get there? And so you're sort of working backwards from the future, I would say.
What are some places that you've run into where there's interesting things happening in AR, VR that are outside of the mainstream, sort of stereotypical tech centers?
I found a few companies in the Ukraine and in Prague. Actually, I was just recently in Prague. It's kind of amazing. I was in Sydney. There's these pockets of innovation everywhere, and even with immersive technology. And it's funny because every single day I find either another solution provider or I find an enterprise company that is using AR and VR in some remarkable way, and they've been off of everybody's radar. And they might be using, Vive, but they didn't necessarily get them from us, so they've gone to, Best Buy or wherever they go, and they have, 50 headsets, and they're training. And I actually found a company in San Francisco, actually in Santa Clara, and they're very specific, so heavy industry. They actually make the machineries that the Intels and the Qualcomms of this world make their chipsets on, right? So it's super specific machinery. And they have an entire team of former game developers who are really well suited for building these types of experiences. They have this whole team, and they've been building, they've got all these Vive solutions, and it was total serendipity that I met them. So, they're out there, but what I do encourage you to do is reach out to us. We can help you. We can shorthand the conversations. If you tell us what type of business you want to be working with, we can tell you what we know and what our experience is, and hopefully we can help you with hardware, we can help you with strategy, we can even help you with outside development resources if you need it.
So what I hear you saying, that you may not be saying, is that if Tech Park or if folks here wanted to engage with the company, that's something that HTC would be open to?
It's something I would be open to. I can't speak for HTC. No. No, this is what we want to do. We are, and I'm not here to sell headsets. That's not what I'm here to do. I want to push the industry forward. Reach out to me personally, and then I will find resources. We have unbelievable teams all over the world at HTC, and I'm just starting. I've only been there for a few months, so I'm starting to meet everybody. But everyone's really passionate about it because this is a young industry, so we're all kind of in this together. So we will help you. But find me first. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find.